where you could go, but when you're trying to match the articulation, at least for me, it's a little easier to do like a little mini sweep, I guess.
So I'm talking with Jake Brown. Jake and I met maybe a year or so ago when I was playing in Greensboro, right? That's where we met.
Yeah, yeah, Greensboro.
And you live there?
So I'm from Chapel Hill and I'm home for the summer, but I go to school in Greensboro. I just finished my sophomore year at UNCG in the jazz program.
Cool. So Jake and I met in person there, and we've had a few exchanges on Instagram. I'm a fan of his Instagram. Jake often is posting play alongs of transcriptions that he has done, jazz transcriptions, and sometimes it's guitar stuff. I really like your Jim Hall Without a Song transcription.
Oh
Uh,
yeah.
Sometimes it's bebop guys. I saw a Bud Powell thing that you did that was amazing. I've seen you do a couple of Charlie Parker transcriptions. I think Billy's Bounce and Donald Lee, I think.
Yeah, and I think I have Yardbird on there somewhere. I've done a handful of those.
Yeah. And somewhere along the way, recently, Jake posted something about, it's his fifth anniversary of playing the guitar. And I just, that like if we were in a movie, that would be like the record scratch sound. Because I've been watching you do these amazing play alongs, and it's, you're really articulate and really swinging. And uh, it was really a head scratcher for me that you've only been playing guitar for 5 years. So I wanted to dig into that a little bit for my own curiosity. And also, I imagine that folks on my Patreon and on my YouTube channel would also be curious because you get, you will hear teachers and other players always advise transcribing. And I think some people they get started and they're like, "Oh, geez, this is hard. Maybe I'll just go back to jamming on pentatonic scales or whatever." And I wonder if you could talk about how you got started transcribing and how you've made such progress in such a short amount of time. I'm so curious.
Oh, well, thank you so much, man, for all the kind words. I really appreciate that. Um, yeah, I mean, I guess I'll just give a little bit of musical background to start. Um, I'd say I come from a pretty musical family. Um, my dad never played professionally, but he can get his way around anything with strings. You know, he's an excellent guitar player, mandolin, plays a little bit of fiddle, but his main thing is like bluegrass banjo. Um, so I was around like a lot of that stuff. My uncle is a professional drummer and he's just incredible. My mom, she doesn't play anything, but she just loves music. So just growing up, I was always around the guitar and around this great music. I listened to a lot of the Beatles and like Elton John, Beach Boys, all that stuff. And my first instrument was drums, actually. I started when I was a little less than a year old, and it's just kind of been like an on and off thing throughout my life. Um, I'm trying to keep this as like short as possible. I got my first guitar. Oh man, I think I was 8 or 9. I don't remember if it was a birthday present or if my parents just like decided to get, but it was one of those rats that like come with the little amp and the stand and everything, and I learned like, G and C, and then I just, did little kid stuff and it just kind of sat and collected dust. Um, and I was playing a lot of sports. I was really into basketball. And then COVID happened. I was 15, I was a freshman in high school, and I couldn't play pickup with my friends, so this is so my generation. But I was sitting in my room scrolling on TikTok and I saw a guy playing like a Mac DeMarco song. I don't know if you, yeah. Um and it had like 500,000 likes or something. And he wasn't even playing the melody, he was just playing the chords. And I thought, well, I could do that. And so I just like picked up my little Strat and learned the chords. I don't even remember what they were. It might have been like a E flat minor or something, but it was definitely bar chords. So the first thing I ever really tried to learn on the guitar was bar chords.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, but I just sat there and figured it out until I could, kind of play it. And I've got the video. It sounds terrible, but you know. Um,
Hmm.
and I was self-taught for a while, and I would just, I'd go to my dad for some stuff, but I would mostly just find stuff that I liked. The thing I ever learned was just what I needed by the Cars.
That is. You learned that guitar solo,
Yeah, after like 3 weeks of playing, I don't know how I managed to do it, but
and when you learned that car solo, was there a video of it somewhere that you could do or watch, or were you just doing it by listening?
it was kind of a mix of both. Like just starting out, I didn't have obviously the ears that I have now. Like I had some experience playing music, I played in the school band and all that stuff, but I never tried to learn something just off of a recording. So I would listen to the album to get all the little nuances, but I watched a couple of tutorials. I don't remember if you know Ben Eller's YouTube channel. I think it was his video on it. Okay. Maybe Marty Schwartz had one. I honestly don't remember. But I remember learning that and just feeling like $1 million, when I finally got it. And I guess that was kind of the start of transcribing and learning solos. And then maybe 8 or 9 months into my journey, I started taking lessons with this guy named Brian Dennis. And he's an excellent player. He played in a funk band that was popular in the like DAG back in the 90s. I don't know if you've heard of them. Um, but yeah, I studied with him for a while, and he was big into like Hendrix and Jeff Beck, and so we'd spend a lot of time just learning that stuff. And he helped me a lot at first, but as I kept playing and got a little better at learning these solos, I'd kind of just figure them out on my own, and then I just kind of did that until I got to college and started really playing jazz. And all my teachers were telling me that transcribing was like a really effective way to get inside the sound and get the language. And I started with just like jazz guitar stuff. I learned a couple of West solos, and then I listened to Charlie Parker, and I didn't get to Coltrane stuff until maybe this past semester. But just the whole process, listening and trying to get it as accurate as possible to the sound.
Yeah, I saw a Coltrane transcription that you posted, and you said at least when you were writing that it was your favorite one that you've done so far. Which tune is that?
Oh yeah, yeah. That was Olio from the Relaxing with Miles album.
Yeah. Uh,
Yeah.
why was that one so great for you?
I mean, I just love the first Miles quintet. I love their sound, and they were going pretty far out with the tunes. And it's Coltrane. I don't know if he'd gotten clean yet, but he was definitely, young and fired up and really going for it. Um and I mean, I'm still young and in school and trying to soak up as much of the language as possible and the authenticity. So I was really working on rhythm changes when I did that solo. I think it was January or February, and my teacher just recommended me, learn that solo. It's a classic recording. And I spent maybe 2 or 3 weeks actually getting the notes and then trying to match his articulation and feel. That was a whole nother process.
Do you actually put stuff down on paper?
I've started to. I did another Coltrane solo for my jury this past semester. It was his solo on My Shining Hour. from the album Coltrane Jazz. And I learned that, and I have an awful habit of forgetting transcriptions if I don't like play them for long enough, or really put the time in to like apply them. So I'm trying to do that more, and I guess through doing that, I've started writing it out. So I've got like the first chorus down, and it's just kind of like an on and off thing whenever I have the time.
Hmm. And obviously, there's no Marty Schwartz video for Coltrane, My Shining Hour. So, how do you begin to figure out, like, okay, this line works well in this position, but then maybe, oh, the next chorus, I've got to move over here because this is gonna, like, how do you find ways to make stuff work nicely on the guitar?
The first phrase of that, like his solo break, I mean, that's just like a straight C major 7 voicing and arpeggio. So I could kind of hear that, and I guess at this point I know the fretboard well enough that that was just what my hands kind of defaulted to. I guess you could also play like, and that's a minor 7 arpeggio or just a minor triad. So I guess just kind of hearing that and connecting it, but I kind of got lucky with that phrase. I mean, there were some other ones where there's a million different ways to play it. I mean, there's one that he plays over a minor 2/5. He goes, and you could play that like that, or you could go. So I would learn it. Um, like I'd get the sound in my head, and then figure out, how many different ways I could play it, and then try and connect it to the phrase that came before it, and connect it to the phrase that comes after. Because I don't want to play it here and then go up here for like the next thing. So I just go here, because I'm already at this E, and the first note of the next phrase, he kind of like there's a little grace note into it, but I heard it as a G sharp, so just or you could go. But when you're trying to match the articulation, at least for me, it's a little easier to do like a little mini sweep, I guess, and so on and so forth.
Hmm. I want to back up. Earlier, you said you played in a band in high school. Do you play a woodwind or a brass instrument?
No, so I played drum set in jazz band for all 4 years of high school. It's kind of funny. I wanted to switch to guitar my senior year, and my band director basically said like, we have another guitar player that can play this stuff. We don't have another drummer, so you're gonna stick on drums. And I was like, okay.
Yeah. So when you're transcribing, like, like, let's say this My Shining Hour transcription, you said like, oh, you could hear that it was G sharp. Do you have perfect pitch?
I do, yeah.
Hmm. Do you think that somebody without perfect pitch can still do a lot of transcribing?
Oh, definitely. I mean, I think transcribing is like anything else with music. If you just put in the time and set goals and just do it every day or as much as possible, you'll get good at it. I mean, that's what I did. I didn't really even discover that I had perfect pitch until a couple of years ago, and I was still learning solos before that. Um, and just because I can hear what the note is, it doesn't make actually playing the solo any less difficult. Um, but yeah, I mean, it might be a little more difficult to learn something like a John Coltrane solo, or like, you know, I guess hear what he's doing or where he's going. But yeah, I think it's definitely possible.
Hmm. And I know that I've had students who have told me that it's easier for them to hear when it's a guitar player. Like I know you've done you did a really great Kenny Burrell transcription, and it for some people just the timbre of it, like when you hear a guitar player play something, you recognize the notes more easily than if it's a tenor sax or alto sax. Do you find that that's true for you, that the timbre of something makes it easier or harder or anything like that, or is it all just the same information for you?
I definitely think that the timbre or the instrument makes it easier or harder. I mean, you know, I I've listened to enough of like the great jazz guitar players that I can, for the most part, I can pick out, Kenny Burrell versus Wes versus Jim Hall versus Pat Martino or whoever. Um, and I'm getting there with saxophone players, and hearing, what they're doing, because it's hard with all the train stuff. Like when you slow it down, there's so many like little overtones and ghost notes, and then when you speed it up, it's like, wait, that's not really there, or it's not as emphasized as it is when it's at half speed or 25% speed or whatever. So I guess learning guitar solos is a little easier in that that's not really as big of a problem. Um, yeah, I mean, I've gotten pretty good at hearing saxophone stuff. Piano's also pretty difficult, at least for, as a person that plays guitar. I'll tell you though, singing, like when I, go to learn a tune and I'm learning the melody from like a vocal recording, like Frank Sinatra or whoever, it's really difficult for me because um, the human voice, it's not always perfectly in tune. There's lots of little things that I remember. I was learning Skylark for improv class this past semester, and I was learning it from the Hoagie Sings Carmichael album, and there were a bunch of notes that were like, in between. And at the time, I didn't know the song, so it took me a while to work it out, just because I was guessing so much. Like, is it this? Is it that? But
Hmm.
yeah, I mean, to answer your question, it is definitely, it makes a difference, like what instrument is playing, at least for me.
Hmm. And when you mentioned singing, I wanted to ask you, is singing part of your transcription process?
It's starting to be. I used to um just kind of sit down and listen to it a bunch, but just kind of dive straight in and just start copping all the notes. Um, and I would take it like one phrase at a time. Um, but my roommate this past school year was really trying to get me to like just listen to it until I could sing it with the recording, and then sing it without the recording, and then you can put it on the instrument. And it's definitely a longer process. Um, and I have trouble focusing on things for long periods of time. At least with stuff like that. I mean, Coltrane solos or whatever. But yeah, I've definitely started to do that a little bit more. And the way that I do that is I'll just kind of loop like a 4 bar phrase or an 8 bar phrase, or even just like 1 or 2 bars, until I can sing it and really hear it. So I'm not, trying to guess where it is on the guitar. Um, but I also, I'm not a master of the fretboard, obviously, but I know it well enough that I don't know if this makes sense, but like sometimes I see in my head like how I would play something on the guitar. Like this morning, I had to drive to Raleigh, and I was listening to Sonny Rollins' "A Night at the Village Vanguard," great record, and he played a lick, and I just like I saw like a fretboard in my head, and I saw fingers doing whatever it was, So I guess there's some kind of connection there.
Hmm.
But yes, I am slowly but surely working on actually singing the solos before I try and play them.
Hmm. Uh, what about in your right hand? Like it's, I do get the thing of visualizing on the fretboard. I try to do that too. I sometimes, if I'm somewhere where I don't have guitar in hand, I try to just listen to something and I try to imagine where it might lay out on the fretboard. But when you were talking about that Coltrane transcription and just getting the articulation, and sometimes it might be a sweep or some other kind of thing in the right hand. Uh, is that something that you spend a lot of time on? Like what's going on with the articulation?
Yeah, I mean, I'd say I spend more time trying to get that figured out than actually what the notes are. Um, but yeah, that just comes from listening to it over and over again and really listening for all the little details. Um, yeah, I'm trying to think of a phrase that I could like demonstrate that with. Again, that one I talked about earlier with the minor 2/5. Um, like, you could pick it, but it's not the most efficient way to do it. So doing this little sweep here, and I'm barely even picking it, but it's there, and I can hear Train doing that. And when I transcribe, I try to be as accurate as possible and really get in John Coltrane's head. As weird as that is for me to say. Um, there's another phrase after that. Yeah, that.
Oh
Like
yeah.
this little thing here. Like, I'm not really picking that C, but I can kind of hear that it's there in the recording, so I'll just kind of just tap it a little bit. And I'm doing a hammer on there because that's the accented note, and then I do another little mini sweep. Um,
Hmm.
and I'm not a saxophone player, so if I get some of the like terms and vocabulary mixed up, then apologies to all the saxophone players. But like I can hear when he's tonguing stuff and when he's slurring stuff, or I try to hear it rather, and match that on the guitar. I remember I went through a big Jimmy Rainey phase this past school year, and I was reading like an interview with him or like a little biography or something. And he was talking about being in New York and like, getting his stuff together. Um, and he said when he would transcribe horn solos, he wouldn't pick every note. He'd do a lot of like hammer-ons and pull-offs. But when he would learn piano solos, you know, you can't really do slurs on a piano, so you gotta pick every note. And I remember trying to do that when I was learning the Bud Powell solo, um, and just kind of half-assing it, for lack of a better term, because I'm not the fastest alternate picker. I actually pick with my non-dominant hand. I don't
Hmm.
know if that has any, impact on how I pick, but yeah.
Hmm. Uh, yeah. Have you read this book, the Journals of Sonny Rollins?
No, I have his biography, Saxophone Colossus. It's like this thick, but I'm slowly working my way through that. But no, I don't have the notebooks.
Yeah, the notebook. Yeah, I said journals. It's notebooks. Yeah, so it's a much thinner book. Might be fun to dig into that when you're done with the big book. But it is really interesting to see, like you were talking about, when you slow these saxophone solos down. There's all this other stuff going on with overtones, and I always wondered, how much of that stuff is just the nature of the instrument, how much of it is stuff that players are actually trying to do, and how much of it is just kind of well, what's the word? I can't think of what the word is, but just artifacts, just stuff that's just like happening, but it maybe is not intentional. And it was interesting, at least in the Sonny Rollins notebooks, how much he's, very much thinking about all the stuff that is part of the sound. I don't imagine that with Sonny Rollins' case anyway, that anything that you hear is accidental. That he's really trying to put a lot into the sound, and I would imagine so of Coltrane. And then there's certainly a guitar version of that as well. There's noises that guitar players make that maybe if you weren't a guitar player, you might wonder, wow, what is that? Just like an open string, or the sound of that kind of stuff.
Definitely.
Um, uh, and also, I'm wondering, like on that Relaxin' with the quintet record, like how old was Coltrane on that record?
Oh man, I'm such a nerd. This was recorded in I think all those Miles Quintet albums were recorded like on the same day or week, but
Mm-hmm.
kind of staggered releases. I think Relaxin' was recorded like 1956. So Train was what, 29, 30? Yeah.
Wow, a young fellow, really.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right? Wow. So what's the benefit? I mean, besides the fact that, you've got a lot of people interested in what you're doing, which is just it's cool to hear that was part of the spark, like to learn that Mac DeMarco solo and like, oh well, this has 500,000 views. Maybe I maybe I should do some stuff on, you know,
Yeah.
um, like besides traction on the internet, like as a player, what's the benefit of doing all this work?
I mean, for me, the benefit I'm always I don't like, sounding like I'm tooting my own horn, but I think I have a pretty good ear, but it could always be better, right? So, I listen to all these records and learn all these solos to kind of, work on my ear training and, being able to hear these little details better that we're talking about. And just getting more technique on the instrument, I mean, learning saxophone solo, I mean, but putting it on a completely different instrument, it's definitely a workout and a slow burn for sure. Um, but like I'd say transcribing is one of the bigger, if not the biggest, parts of my practice routine, and it's not always full solos. Like if I have to learn one for a lesson or a jury, or if I just want to do it for fun, I'll definitely learn the full solo. But a lot of the stuff I do is just learning little licks, or just learning a bunch of. That's what I've been doing a lot recently. I haven't really had time to transcribe, just because I had a stream of gigs the last week, so I kind of had to like speed learn a bunch of songs. Um, but yeah, there's a Kurt Rosenwinkel solo that I want to work on soon, so
Mm-hmm.
hopefully I
Which
can
one?
start.
Which?
Lazy Bird from the East Coast Love Affair album.
Mm-hmm.
I love how he like comps for himself the whole time. It's really amazing.
I mean, that's to me like super high level. I saw also you did a Ben Monder transcription. Like, is there anything
Yes.
that you would turn away from and say, yeah, I'm just not even gonna.
Yeah, I started a Charlie Parker solo this past semester. It's that recording of Cherokee with just like and it's just like my favorite bebop solo ever. and I got it. It's three choruses where he's just blowing the whole time, like the first phrase of the melody, and then just goes into Charlie Parker world. Um, but I got maybe two choruses that this is too hard, and I had other things that I had to prioritize working on at the time. And I guess like Oscar Peterson or someone super crazy like that, or Alan Holdsworth. But yeah, I mean that Monder solo was super fun to learn. I've really enjoyed his playing this past semester. I think it was, I'll remember April,
Hmm.
and it was all those chords. I'm trying to remember them. Yeah, was it? Nope. There we go.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was definitely difficult. Like trying to hear it, and all the intervals are so close together. You know, but when I try and learn stuff like that, like chord solos, I like to start by figuring out what the top note is and what the bottom note is, and that kind of provides most of the context. I mean, when you're learning like Jim Hall stuff where he's not really playing the roots, it can be kind of ambiguous. Um, but with the Ben Monder thing, I mean, that's all over G major. So I heard that's the nine, that's the six, and then with the middle, I just kind of, to be honest, I just kind of guess until I figure it out. You know.
Right. Just given what notes are in the chord and just the mechanics of the guitar, it's either going to be probably this or that, right?
Right. Right.
Yeah. Um. Uh. Shoot, I had a question in my mind and I forgot what it's going to be. Oh well, yeah. You were saying that most of your practice time goes into transcribing, but I know that just before we started this conversation, you said you were sitting down to practice. Like, what else goes into your practice time?
Yeah. Oh, I'm trying to like put a practice routine back together because with the last month of school, you got juries and gigs, and I had to play on a couple of people's like final presentations and recitals and stuff. Um, and I got this. It's just crazy. And I was putting in like anywhere from 4 to 8 hours a day just because I had the time and I could sit and do it. And then, I moved out and had a couple of quick little trips. So I didn't really play guitar for a couple weeks. So I've been trying to really get this routine back together. But all that to say, I guess I usually warm up with just running scales. I usually do just like major and melodic minor, harmonic minor. I do it in as many positions as possible in all 12 keys. I'll do I'll do arpeggios. I'll do like major seven, minor seven, dominant, half diminished, diminished, all that stuff. Um, and the way I practice those, you can play them straight up and down, but I like to go like diagonally up the neck just because as a guitar player, you're moving around a lot and it's more efficient. So, I'll go and then go back down to F, B flat, and so on. Different ways to play it as possible. And then, once my fingers are warmed up, and I'll do triads and seventh chords too. Um, and then, I'll usually spend some time working on music for gigs or just stuff that I want to learn for fun, which is, you know, really important. If you're not enjoying what you're doing, why are you doing it? Like I always try and have some kind of reason to be working on something. Like I'm trying to really get my solo playing together. So I've booked a couple of gigs before um am gone for most of the summer, and I'll just, sit and pick a tune and, try and make a little chord melody out of it.
Oh, can you play a few bars or something just to show?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, so I've been trying to figure out spread triads too. Just because that's a very, I don't know, it's a very big concept. Um, so I was trying to make chord melodies using those as much as I could. Um, Here I was doing Skylark, so it went like,
Hmm.
yeah, something like
Beautiful.
that. Thank you so
Beautiful.
much.
Wow. Uh, I got one more question because I know that people are going to ask. So,
Yeah,
what
man.
is that guitar and what are those pickups?
So this is a Heritage H535. Um, I got this guitar the summer before I started college. I wanted a jazz guitar, but also I love and listen to other kinds of music, so I wanted something that could cover a wide range of styles. Um, and I got this. I got it from my friend Eddie Berman, who I think you might know through Facebook or Instagram or
Hmm.
something. But he's one of my dearest friends and mentors, and he found this guitar for me. Um, so I got it used, and these were the pickups that were in the guitar. They're Lawlers. I don't know the exact model, but they're humbucker size P90s, and it's a great little guitar, man. I mean, this is. I also, it's a bit too far for me to pick it up, but I have a Eastman arch top that I use a lot at school, and that one's great, But this one, I mean, it just kind of plays itself, And I really just love that guitar. I think I'm just a 335 guy.
Cool.